Much. Hello, my name is Lawrence Mozaffari. I'm Editorial Director for Youth Audience at Reach, and I'm also one of the Vice Chairs here at the BSME. Thank you so much for being here today. We really do appreciate it. Before we get started with today's Icon conversation, I've got a little bit of housekeeping for you. First of all, we really wanted to thank the Rosewood for letting us use the beautiful mirror room here today. It really is such a fantastic venue, and we really do appreciate the partnership. Round of applause for the Rosewood. Come on. This is the third in our annual series of Icons lunches, and we really appreciate your support that you can be here today. And if you would like to support the BSME and become a member, you can head over to thebsme.com and make sure you tag us in your social posts from today along with the Rosewood. There will be a Q&A at the end of today's session, so make sure you save your questions for the end. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the chair of the BSME and editor-in-chief of Mary Claire, Andrea Thompson, who will be speaking with Caitlin Moran, the award-winning author and journalist. And here she comes, our icon for today.
Hello everybody, so lovely to see everybody. Wow, what a room. Thank you so much, and thank you to the Rosewood. I'm delighted to be here today for this conversation. Like millions, I have admired Caitlin for many years. In fact, every single Saturday, it's literally my ritual to go out and buy the Times, and I devour her column on the way home. I can never wait to get home. So it's great to be able to sit with her. I'm really looking forward to speaking to her today about everything from, how she built her career, the nuts and bolts of how she writes, to the future of the media industry and her views about that, but also get into, how she became such a sort of frank, honest commentator on, what's happening in our world, in Britain, and on women's lives. We're also going to talk a little bit about a very special new prize that we've launched. The BSME, together with Caitlin, we're on the hunt for a new up-and-coming, talented writer that we're going to support. So more on that later. But without further ado, welcome, Caitlin. I just want to give everyone a little bit of background about you. Yep. So from her working class upbringing in Wolverhampton to her status as a best-selling author and Times columnist, Moran's career has been defined by her ability to tackle big, often uncomfortable topics about class, mental health, and the chaos of modern womanhood with brutal honesty, humour, and insight. Caitlin was home educated by her parents in a council house in Wolverhampton and won the Observer Young Reporter of the Year competition in 1990 at the age of 15. She went on to publish her first novel at age 16. Since then, she has simply refused to stop writing. A columnist at the Times since 1992, she's won every major journalism award, most of them several times over, including Columnist of the Year and Interviewer of the Year. Her 2012 book, How to Be a Woman, was an instant international bestseller and translated into 38 languages, and named one of the most influential books of the 21st century by The Guardian. Her next 4 books, How to Build a Girl, How to Be Famous, More Than a Woman, and What About Men, were all also #1 bestsellers. Wow, Caitlin, we are very privileged to have you. I want to start off by asking you, really, a bit about your background and, what about your unique background prepared you to be a writer?
I have to say, yes. Given my background, Icon is the idea of being at an Icon's lunch that's kind of about me. I don't feel very iconic today, I have to say. I woke up with raging cystitis. And the minute I leave here, I've got to put on the muddy boots that I've got in that dressing room to go to a festival in Somerset, where I will have cystitis at a festival, which has been one of the recurring things in my life. It was a Dickensian background. So my parents were hippies who'd taken a lot of drugs. And in 1986, they decided that they wanted to home educate us. And there are 2 kinds of people who home educate. There's the kind of middle-class people who go, sending our children to school every day, that's not enough education. all of life should be an education. If we home educated them, we could give them more education than a formal system. We could, on a walk through nature, we could be teaching them about geology and geography and the history of this area. And at home, when we do cooking, we could be teaching about the physics of using baking powder and making things rise. And we could really educate, we could spend a lot of time with our children, really love our children, really care for our children, and really educate our children. My parents were the second kind of home educators, which is that they were just too fucking lazy to take us to school every day. They had 8 children, and I now understand as a parent how getting 8 pairs of clean socks and pants and clothes onto 8 children and getting them out of the house is just too much of a shag. So they took us all out of school and then proceeded to give us no education whatsoever. And people go, well, you must be exaggerating this. They must have, surely legally, like the local education authority would be checking up on you. No. Literally, we never had a lesson in our lives. We simply sat at home and watched classic 1950s MGM musicals, interspersed with the works of Rick Mayall, and ate a lot of cheese. And during that time, we created what I still think to be my greatest achievement, which was the invention of the cheese lollipop, which is simply a fist-sized piece of cheese, very cheap cheddar from the local supermarket, speared onto a fork, which you then lick very slowly as you're watching Bugs Bunny or Rick Mayall. Which is why I was a size 24 by the age of 16. I learned a lot about the effects of cheese on the body. That was a lesson. So we're not doing anything. We're very, very bored. And one of the great things about being bored is after a while you think, I could just write a book. I was 13 and we were very poor. And I was just like, around about the age of 13, I just clocked that with no education and no future prospects, that I would have to start earning money. And the only way that I knew that you could earn money if you had no resources and no friends and no education was to write, because that's what Jo does in Little Women, and that's what the mother does in The Railway Children when they become impoverished. So I just started writing a book, and my belief was that because it would take me a day to read a book, because I'm a very fast reader, that it would surely only take a day to write a book. And at the end of the first day, with hand cramp, covered with cheese all over my face, I realised it actually takes a lot longer than a day to write a book. But I finished that novel, and when it was published, Valerie Grove from The Times was like, oh, I've heard that a now 16-year-old home-educated girl has written a book, and she came to interview me, which was a huge deal. I enjoyed the interview, but as soon as she turned the tape recorder off, I just leant across and went, Valerie, okay, let's get to business. How do you make money being a writer? Because I thought for writing this book, I would be given £1 million. And I found out that's not the case. They've given me £1,800, and this took me 5 years. What do I do? And she went, you need to be a columnist, babe. That's how you would earn money every week as a writer if you became a columnist. So then the Observer ran the Observer Young Reporter of the Year competition, which I entered and won. And everybody else had taken the brief very seriously. You were supposed to write a news report about something that had happened in your local area, like a celebrity coming or the opening of a new community centre, and write it as a serious report. And I wrote it instead as a comedy piece in the style of a parody of Kate Adie to cover the event of us trying to wash my brother's hair, because he was 3 years old and really did not like having his hair washed. He would fight. It became quite visceral and military. So I just wrote it up in the style of a news report, and I won that competition. And then they offered me a column for the summer. That wasn't part of the prize, but they went, for the duration of the summer holidays, do you want to write a column every week? And I was like, yes, I like money. And they didn't publish the last one. They didn't say why. They just went, sorry, we're just not going to publish this one this week. And so in a huff, I went to the newsagents around the corner and picked up a copy of The Times and found out what their fax number was and faxed it from the fax machine in the local newsagents, going, the Observer don't want to publish this, but maybe you would like to. And by the time I'd got home, my mum was standing in the hallway on the landline going, Kate, someone from the Times has just rung up and they want to talk to you. And I took the phone and they went, yeah, we'd like you to be a columnist. Would you like to have a regular job on The Times? And it took me about 20 years to realise that's not generally how people get columns on bullshit newspapers. It was quite an unusual event and with no real take-home lesson there. Other than that, I found out years later when I ran into the editor at The Observer why they hadn't run that column, which I was so peevish about, and it was because the war in Iraq had broken out. They'd had to pull everything and write about the war. I was oblivious. I was just like, they haven't published my column. Fuck them, I'm going to The Times.
I mean, it's just such a unique entry, isn't it, given that like so many columnists are from a certain background,
yes.
Do you think that anything like that could happen today?
Well, I'd like to, I mean, we'll be talking about the prize later. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get involved in it, because I think if you come from my kind of background, I mean, you know, when I meet sort of like, you know, a lot of the columnists, I always sort of, I don't know, I always presume that people have come from a working class background until they start saying, where did you ski as a child? Or they know how to pronounce the word, is it sommelier? The wine man.
Oh, sommelier.
Yes, I call him the wine man. I just don't know those words. Those are the moments where you realise we have very different backgrounds. But all you need, and it's only because you know that's the kind of job you can have. If you come from, you know, a posh background or you're going to public school, it's a job you've heard about. You know people who've got it, and so you're like, I could do that. You know, it's that whole thing of I cannot be what I cannot see. You know, if you're living on a council estate in Wolverhampton and the only people you know are people who can steal you a bag of gravel from Wickes, you're not hearing in the general day-to-day discourse that there's a job of being a columnist. So that's why, you know, we'll be talking about the prize later, but you just... I interviewed Kathy Burke yesterday, which was such a thrill, and just talking to another working class girl, and she went to the Anna Scher School, and they just had a catchment area, and if you were a working class kid and you wanted to learn to act, you could go to Anna Scher. The amount of talent that has come out of Anna Scher in that very small catchment area, that's not a coincidence. It's just simply, like, in any area, if you give a load of working class kids an opportunity, they'll run with it. You just need to give more working class kids opportunities. Just say to them, this is how you can do this job, here you are, and they'll run for it. It's not that public school people are cleverer or better. They simply have the opportunity.
I mean, decades on, you've had one of the longest running columns in British publishing. What do you think it is that makes people keep coming back when we live in a world that's just so saturated with content?
I mean, a lot of it now, it just is familiarity, isn't it? Like, I'm just there. Like, just sort of like, that's where I am. See you every Saturday and Thursday. But I guess I try so hard. People who don't understand my writing, I had a friend who was in a very cool rock band, and we were very close friends, and I would tell him all the time how brilliant his music was and how incredible he was. And then I would leave a pause for him to say how great my writing was. And because he was a cool indie boy, he just would not rise to the bait. And in the end, I literally went, come on, I literally spent 3 hours telling you how incredible you are. Tell me why I'm great. And he went, yeah, your writing, it's just a bit chatty. He thought that was a diss. That 90% of my energy is to try and make it as conversational as possible. When I write those pieces, they're supposed to be a stand-up routine. That's how I imagine it. If I'd had the balls and I wasn't socially anxious, I would have been a stand-up comedian if I couldn't have been a writer. They're supposed to be a sort of 4-minute, 5-minute piece where I come up, a very conversational stand-up routine. I think being chatty that's where 90% of the effort goes. If I'm off my game, if I'm suffering from cystitis, I will write something that isn't chatty. It will be really quite serious. It'll be kind of like, I'm on the Times and I have a serious tone and I'm telling you my thoughts and you should listen to them because I'm a writer. That's when I know I've written something that's bullshit. And you need to go back and rewrite that and go, no, I'm going to talk to you. Let's sit here. Let's talk about this. I'm going to make this. It should not be an effort to read a piece. And I think the more serious a subject is and the more worthy something is, the more you as a writer should be making an effort to make it a joy to read. Because I don't believe that reading about progress or feminism or racism or mental health or any of the things that I would write about should make it feel like you're eating a big bag of fibre. It should be as joyful as reading about a review of a pop band or, you know, someone talking about a rainbow or how much they love dogs. That's the tone that you should be writing about these things in, because that's how you make people want to read it. Like, any idea of progress or talking about difficult subjects shouldn't be only restrained to a readership that have got the time and the education to read something really serious and worthy and academical. It should be able to be read and understood by and enjoyed by everyone. That's the effort.
Yeah, I want to get a little bit more into the nuts and bolts of how you write in a minute, but I just wanted to revisit something that you just touched on about anxiety, because you just talked about being anxious, and you come across as somebody that's very self-assured. How has your anxiety informed your writing over the years?
I used to do this bit on stage where, you know how Sophia Loren always goes, I owe everything I have to pasta. I would do this bit on stage where I go, I have everything I have, I owe to anxiety. Because I was I had my first panic attack when I was 13, when I realised that we were very poor and our family was fucked. And I'm writing a new book. The book I'm writing at the moment is called How to Be Hopeful, because this is not a hopeful age. And I was like, I want to write a book explaining how I have now started to be hopeful about the future again. And I've spent the last couple of years, after quite a big nervous breakdown, really changing my life and the way that I think so that I can be hopeful. And that's what this book is about, what I've learned. But The chapter that I've written about anxiety is called Anxiety, My Best Bad Friend, because there are many good things about anxiety. Anxiety is basically a massive amount of adrenaline and noradrenaline. That is speed. So when you are having a panic attack or when you're very anxious, you are on a very huge amount of amphetamines. And that is what they gave Nazi armies to march and fight. Like, kind of, you know, this is what all the beatnik poets were on. Like, you know, there are physicists who would take amphetamines all night to stay up. So when your body is flooded with these drugs, you are incredibly productive. Like, your brain is super fast and sharp. Like, the changes in your brains, you do become smarter and faster and very driven to work. You become, you know, the only thing often that will calm your mind when you're very anxious is to work. So I do owe everything I have to anxiety. But when I got into my 40s, I found a diagram of the human body and I saw the adrenal gland. And it's a tiny little triangular thing that just sort of sits above your liver. And I was like, oh yeah, I can feel that. God, it feels sad. It feels really overworked and like it would like a rest. I was very aware that I was just burning out my adrenal glands. And I was like, and so I formally announced to my family, I was like, I'm going to stop being anxious anymore. I'm going to get beta blockers. I'm going to look at everything that I'm doing in my life and I'm going to stop being anxious. Unfortunately for you guys, this means that I will probably be unemployed in 6 months because I think without anxiety, I can't write and I won't be clever and my career will be over. I'm just bracing you all now. Like, mummy's going to be very poor and very sad. And I took the beta blockers and I did everything I could to stop being anxious. And I actually work more now than I did when I was anxious. And I'm so sad that I spent those 30 years thinking that it was only every morning waking up and getting this, you feel adrenaline going through your body, you feel it in your guts. And I would just sit down to work and just get this huge rush and just sit there like this, like, okay, I'm in my druggy state, I can do this now. And it turns out I didn't need to do it at all.
Wow. I mean, let's get into the bit about the process of writing, because you managed to turn out, you know, you're very prolific, you've got lots of books as well as columns, and, you know, you're obviously doing 2 columns a week as well. What is your process? Like, do you have it all mapped out? Do you know what you're going to write from the beginning? Or do you kind of meander and find your way? And also, how long does it take you?
So on my phone, I've got various notes opened, and they're like book ideas, TV ideas, film ideas, column ideas. And so I will always know weeks in advance what I'm going to write. So whenever I'm out on a dog walk or cooking or something, I'm thinking about what I'm going to write. So because really there's no such thing as writing, it's just thinking. Like, kind of like you're a thinker, you're not a writer, really. So you do all the thinking before you sit down to do the writing. I mean, if I have to, sit down and turn something out, I can do it straight away because I've been doing it for so long now. I've got skills and I know how to put something together. But I know everything that I'm going to write before I sit down. Not the entirety of it, but like if you're writing a column, like 800 words, it's a really short space to work in. It always makes me think of that Jane Austen thing of like, I do everything on 2 inches of ivory. It's a really short run. And so to structure something like that, it's 3 sections. You need to have an intro. Most intros for columnists, particularly if they're like a kind of an opinion columnist, will either be, this is terrible, or lesser, this is great. I try and find a third way of going, let's boggle about this. And what's going on here? Like, kind of like a sort of like, let's call people in, like, guys, hey, let's have a chat here. I try so hard to make that first paragraph, whatever your political persuasions are, whatever you think about a subject, in that first 200 words in that first section, I'm going to make you feel that you can engage in this, and I'm going to take you on a journey. Second section, midsection, is we trot through what's happening, and then you want to make sure you've got a turn at the end and land something unexpected at the end. Like, you should not be able to guess what my last section is going to be from my beginning, because that's what I like to read. My favourite ever book is The Never-Ending Story. I don't know if anyone's read that book, The Never-Ending Story. Yay, whoa, never-ending story. But in the book, the whole thing is that Bastian's reading a book, and then suddenly, at the midway point, he goes into the book and he becomes part of the story. And I can remember reading that as a child and just jolting with how exciting that was, because I was like, that's what I've always wanted a book to do. I want it to do something really unexpected. I want that big turn. I want it to get bigger at the end, not smaller. So I always try and make sure that end is like kind of that you end up somewhere unexpected. It should be just a little journey by the time you get to the end. But it just reads as chatty, according to my friend Martin, who was in a #1 best-selling band.
I know that you now sort of give a lot of tips and workshops around writing. You do have quite a distinctive voice. What kind of advice do you give young writers about honing their voice and also pitching it in to mainstream media? Obviously, you don't have to pitch anymore. I'm assuming, but when you
by
did,
50,
yeah.
you've stopped having periods and you start having to pitch. Hopefully, that's always been my belief. With writing, just saying it out loud, like kind of like, you know, my children aren't writers, but they sometimes have to write things for work, and they'll sort of like, can you have a look at it, Mum? And I'll sort of like get one sentence in, and I'll just say, have you said this out loud? And they'll be like, no. I was like, it's always the same. If I say it out loud, you just need to see what the rhythm of it is. Like kind of like it's really. Also, one of the biggest skills as a writer is to be able to switch from writer to reader. When you write it, you are the author, you write it. You need to learn it. You learn to become quicker at this. You need to learn, the minute you finish writing it, to completely forget that you've written it, completely blank your mind, and then read it as a reader. You need to forget that you wrote it and read it as a reader. And you just constantly ask yourself, what do I as a reader want to happen now? Is this a bit boring? Do I understand this? I want a joke here now. So it's that thing, and you learn it quicker as you write more. But just you need to switching between being a reader and a writer is really, really important. I think we often stay in writer mode. But yeah, say it out loud, and just keep asking yourself as a reader, what do I want to happen now?
And what are your thoughts about newsletters? Because that's something that a lot of journalists now obviously turning to, and Substack, and you're very successful at. Is it the same kind of approach? What kind of advice would you pass on there for having something that people keep returning to?
I mean, people feel that they've got a relationship with it. I feel I have a relationship with readers. Like kind of like when I make my readers, I feel like I know them. Like I'm very much imagining who is reading this. I feel like I know the kind of person who's reading it and who is getting it. So it is like a lovely chance to just sit down and have a natter at a longer length to your friends, and just kind of, you know, there's always, my ideal column length would probably be 7,000 words. So I am very chatty, and I'd be wanting to put links into things and going like this song, and here's a pair of shoes that I liked, and all this kind of stuff. So that's what a newsletter allows you to do. But I do wonder what the future will be with Substacks and newsletters, because I was reading a piece, was in the Atlantic last week, that was going like the average person subscribes to like 6 or 7 newsletters or Substacks. The amount that's mounting up to just to have one writer, like at the beginning of this process where people had Substacks and newsletters, it was great. It was a new thing to the market. But as time goes on, if everybody's got a Substack or a newsletter, and suddenly you're spending £1,000 a year on subscriptions, you start going, hang on. When I had newspapers and magazines, there were loads of writers in there, and the paper was only £4. Like, this is starting to look financially, maybe we'll go back, or maybe there will be conglomerations of writers who will go, you'll get a Substack with 4 or 5 writers, like a kind of mega team United Artists, sort of all on one Substack. But I can't, at the moment, as it proliferates, I think there's a point where the market won't be able to take any more. So I love them at the moment, but I think that's a transitional phase. I think that will have to turn into something else in a couple of years' time, because you can't. That's why I still love reading the Times. Most of my favourite writers are in the Times and the Sunday Times. If I was having to subscribe to all their separate Substacks, then we would not be going on holiday next year.
And you're very, very frank in your writing as well, aren't you? And you talk about all sorts of topics, from pubic hair to menstruation, abortion, things that other people haven't touched. Do you think that in an age of social media where, you know, it's so much about the confessional with with social media influencers, that is the way that people have to be to get the sort of following that you have now?
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because again, it's been a journey. I've sat there for like 15 years and watched it. I remember when I wrote about masturbation in How to Be a Woman, I was kind of summoned onto Newsnight by Jeremy Paxman, who just asked, looking like just an outraged horse, why would you write about masturbation? And it was often the simplest questions are the hardest. And I went, well, I don't know, like it's cheap, it's free, it's like a good hobby, it relaxes you, like it doesn't make you fat, I don't know. It was seen as such a huge deal that women were talking about masturbation then. 2 years later, everybody was like, I think we've gone past Pete wanking now, like kind of, you watch a sitcom, every woman is knocking one out left, right and centre, which I love, but we're going to have to find a new wanking now, like kind of, it's gone. So, you know, it's all part of a process. We need to be able to talk about every aspect of being human. And I think it's really interesting to work out what we still don't talk about yet and what's shameful. Like, I know in the arena of mental health, everyone will talk about their anxiety and depression now. They're sexy now. Everyone will talk about neurodiversity. We found a new language to do that. Everybody's diagnosing themselves or being diagnosed. But no one's talking about, for instance, schizophrenia, which I have a lot of experience of within my circle, or psychosis. There are lots of things that we haven't realised yet, that there are things that we do not talk about yet. And I'm always interested to see what the new frontier is. Sometimes we don't even know what we're not talking about until someone starts talking about it. But also I know that there is a very huge pressure on women, particularly, to do very confessional stuff. Particularly with American female writers. And the danger with that is that, you will enjoy writing and can do some social good by breaking a taboo and talking about something very personal and introducing these new subjects. But then the danger is that when you have editors who go, oh, we love this bit about your nervous breakdown and sex addiction, have you got any more stuff like that? And the writer's like, well, no, I got some therapy and I'm feeling a lot better now. And then the editor goes, well, what are you going to do? And they pitch a piece like, oh, I'd like to write about sports. And the editor's like, no, I only want you in your tragedy. And that's happened to young female writers. Notably, that's not happened to men, and that has not happened to older writers. So I worry about that kind of like, if you as a writer, if the only thing you've got to sell is yourself and your experience. I mean, I can name columnists now who seem to almost be deliberately making their lives awful in order to be able to turn out a column every week.
That's a very bad place to be, isn't it?
That's really worrying, that that's the only thing that people are interested in. And that's not good for any of us. That's no good at all.
How about the impact on your family and those around you? Because you have been extremely frank, you know, about your daughter's illness and her battles with, you know, eating disorders. What's been the reaction, first publicly, but also, you know, how have your family felt about that?
So it's a really tricky divide. So, like, it might seem that I share everything about my life and everything that's ever happened to me, but if you actually look at the substance of what I've written, it's kind of a trick. I will tell you one small thing about my life, and then I will then go on and talk about the issue in general. And I think that's the polite way to do it, because I think if you're going to talk about a big subject, you need to give someone a bit of gossip. You also need a vignette at the top of the story. You need to, like, show someone a scene from your life and go, this is what it was like having an abortion or a miscarriage or having an eating disorder or any of the things that I've written about. But then you use that to then go on and talk about the issue, and kind of that's where you do the actual writing. So the amount of stuff, the majority of things that have happened in my life, I have not written about. You would be astonished at how secret and mysterious I actually am. There's such a huge amount of stuff in my life that I'll have to wait for certain people to die before I can write about it. So, and similarly with my family, I've written so little about them, because I'll tell one anecdote about the children, and then I'll talk about motherhood, and then I'll talk about all children. And it seems like I'm telling you everything, but I've given you one line. When my daughter got her eating disorder, once she was well, I said to her, I want to write about this in the next book, because I knew from when she was ill that I could not find anything written by parents, or anyone. All we did for the first 4 years was I spent all my time going around going, explain why this is happening to her. I don't understand why she's ill. I don't know how to make her better. And that is what you are told to do as a parent if your child has an eating disorder. If they're lucky, after a couple of years, they'll see a therapist. But the therapist is like, okay, the other 99% of the time in your child's life, you are going to have to become basically a psychiatric professional and get your child well. This is something you will need to do as a family together. To which I was like, great, okay, I'm fine with hard work. How do I do it? Explain this to me. And there isn't any information out there. I did not understand any aspect of her illness, and I looked everywhere. So I was like, now I understand why she was ill, and now I know what it was that made her better. I want to write about this. But I obviously had to go and ask her and say, is it okay if I write about you? I'm going to use 3 short stories from this 5 years, and then I'm going to talk about the issue in general. And she went, yes, you must write about it, because you were fucking terrible, Mum. You didn't understand it at all, and you need to tell other parents so that they don't make the same mistakes that you did. So it was very much with her blessing, and she got the final edit on it. And it was very much with her blessing that we did it. And I know, I mean, that the 2 years after I wrote about that in More Than a Woman, I would say I got 100 emails a week from families. It's so widespread, as I'm sure everyone in this room knows. Like, I would say a third of all the families that I know, and more than 3/4 of the families that I know with girls in. have girls who either have eating disorders or are self-harming, who were very profoundly mentally ill. And I was, I mean, the response to that was the biggest response I've ever had to anything. It just made me realise what a big problem it is. But now she is thankfully completely recovered. I would say she's too well. She's super thriving. She's her first album is coming out next year, and it's all about her eating disorder. Yeah, she's Eve's Wilder next year. Her Little Miss Sunshine. Her album will be out. She's super well. She tried to lure a fox into our house last week because she was convinced it would be a great pet for her. That's how well she is. She's fostering a fox.
Just moving back to the idea of the media and sort of nurturing independent voices like yours. And do you feel that there has been sort of a renaissance of that kind of popularity of following niche sort of small voices, or do you still feel that it's a bit of an uphill battle?
Well, it's hard, isn't it? Because with so many of the pieces that you read and that go viral or start conversations, often those writers aren't being paid for them. They're blogging for free, and this is one of the things that pains me because. Obviously the 1990s were not perfect, but if you were a working class writer, you could start working for the music press as I did, and you would learn how to write whilst being paid to learn how to write. There isn't really any kind of entry level of press that you could go and work for now where you learn to write and be paid at the same time. So although it's been amazing for writing, it's been amazing for society that all these voices are out there and you can write about anything and find your audience and these pieces can go viral. As a long-term committed class warrior, I'm always like, but what about the money? Why are my girls getting their cash? You have just told your story, you've just started a valuable conversation, possibly globally, but did you get paid for that? And that's it's always a complex thing, but that's the good and the bad of it. But without a doubt, we have more diverse voices now in writing across the board compared to looking around the scene in the 1990s. Without a doubt, we talk about more subjects. Without a doubt, the tone is better and we have greater understanding of these things because so many more voices are heard, but they are voices that are not being paid for that. So it's great for us that we get to read them, but it's not great for the writers.
Which is why we need more young writers,
yes.
Which brings us on to the award.
Yes.
This is a new joint venture between the BSME and Catlin to find, as I mentioned, a talented up-and-coming writing talent between 18 and 25. Why exactly do you feel so passionately about this, Catlin?
I love that you called it a joint venture because it was basically a series of really drunken conversations at various award ceremonies over about 5 years where I kept going, we need to do something about this. And everyone at BSME was like, yeah, we'd really love to do something about this. And then it was my schedule that was bananas, but we finally got it together this year. So we know what the stats are on reading and purchasing newspapers and magazines in this country. Young people basically don't read them. They don't know what they are. They don't read old-fashioned mainstream media, dead print stuff. They're all online. And so as a consequence, they're not writing for it either because they don't know it exists. They don't know that that's a job and they don't want to do that. One of my belief is twofold. One, that's to the detriment of us as an industry, and I love this industry so much. And secondly, I think that is a detriment to those generations as well who are missing out on that, not least from a mental health point of view. Like all the research that I've been doing for this new book. So even in this year alone, 46% of people said that they'd stopped watching the news entirely. And that's gone up from 29% in 2019. And it's being online all day and scrolling through breaking news. We are not meant to do that. Our brains are not evolved to do that. We cannot handle it. And you can see it in the mental health statistics. And for young people, that's their idea of news. And it's kind of a lie to be reading your breaking news like this online because on Monday you're sent into a panic that something terrible has happened in the world. And by the time you get to Saturday, often it's been resolved. There's some talks have happened. People have stepped down. The UN has stepped in. It's all been resolved. But obviously no one's talking about that story by Saturday. It's the next lot of breaking news. For my children's mental, for my mental health, I found that my anxiety, one of the big things that stopped me being anxious was coming off Twitter, coming off social media, not reading breaking news anymore. And now the amount of news that I allow myself is at the weekend, I get the weekend papers and I read analysis of things that have happened. Because the other presumption is with breaking news, and I don't remember this when I was growing up. When you watch the news when you were a kid, it was like, oh, there's the news. Okay, it's happened. Now I know the news. Now you're supposed to interact with the news. It's kind of what's my call to action? I must now go on social media and stand on my social media balcony and say, I condemn these events in this country. And if you don't, often people go, your silence is notable, your voice would be useful on this subject for every single thing that's happening in the world. We are all suddenly supposed to be responsible for the news and make our statements about where we stand on every single issue. First of all, it doesn't make any difference at all. It's so weird that this is the thing that we all think we've got to do. It doesn't make any difference at all whether you pompously go on Facebook and say, I condemn what is happening here now. What will help is just giving a donation to charity, and then getting on with your life and not becoming incredibly mentally ill. So that's why for young people, I want them to understand that this industry and what we do is good for them. It's good for their lives. It's good for their sanity. It's good for their mental health. And also, this is the best job in the world. This is the best industry in the world, and particularly in this country. You know, our country's history of writing, of finding new brilliant voices and talent is extraordinary. Our soft power is incredible. This is what makes us so fun. This is why even if you have a great weekend in New York, you're like, thank God I'm back in London. And I want to find those young people and bring them on board. And it's so important that it's a competition, because, you know, we were talking before about class and the sort of prevalence of public school kids in this industry. I know that when The Observer launched that competition, that just felt like someone in London, big London that I'd never been to, reaching their hand across the country and going, you can have this job. Like, we're literally inviting you now to come and do this. Come and join us. And that's what I want to do. I want young people to know that we are saying, we want you to come and join us. We need you. We need young voices. We need your talent. We need you to write to your generation and bring new people on board. And you need us. And just come and join our gang in the best job, in the best place in the world.
And it has a prize, doesn't it? Which
Yes.
is also important. I mean, obviously, what are your thoughts on the money side? Because we're trying to raise 10,000. Well, we're looking for sponsors for 10,000, which I think is a really important part of it, isn't it?
Well, the two things we talked about, I was like, people need their money. I don't want young, brilliant, working class talent writing their Substacks and their blogs for free. So that was the idea, that we were like, there needs to be a solid amount of money in it, so that if you are... Because the advantage you have if you're a middle-class kid and you're writing your blog for free is like your parents are subsidising you. That's fine. If you're a working-class kid, before you write your blog for free, you will have had to been working in a job to pay your rent. So you will be knackered before you even sit down at the laptop. That's an unfair disadvantage. So it was very important that we put money in with this prize. You bitch got to pay rent. And I will also be mentoring the winners, so I can give them advice and tell them how to pitch, and just sit down with them and talk about what's great about writing and just ask them all the questions. I know I've had, for the last 20 years, the best editor in the world, Nicola Gill at the Times. I would not be able to do what I do if I did not have Nicola as my editor, because she is the best, because she will ask you questions. She will, yes, Nicola, come on, Nicola. Yes, she is the dream, and I'd never had an editor like her before, because she trusts me, but she will ask me questions. She will bring out the best opinions and angles on stuff, and that's what I want to be able to do for a writer. I'm basically going to dress up like you, Nicola, and and ask these writers all the questions that have helped, you know, that's how you turned me into a great writer. So I'm going to mentor, we're going to give them cash, we're going to mentor them, we're going to love bomb them, and we're going to get them, hopefully this time next year, in this room at the next Icons lunch, and with an amazing career.
How wonderful. Can't wait. Thank you so much, Caitlin. I think we're going to open it up for some questions now. Need a mic, don't I? Oh, Tim.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. That was brilliant. Thank you. I'm quite interested to hear your perspective. When you started out, you didn't get much feedback, maybe a letter.
Yes.
Now you get comments under the stories. You probably get analytics. What's your relationship with that, about hearing back from your audience?
I do not engage with any of it at all whatsoever. All the writers I know will say there is no good to come of going below the line. Like, never read the comments, because sometimes they're really lovely. I wouldn't know. It was reported to me often when I interviewed Melvin Bragg. Apparently every single comment underneath that feature was positive. My husband reported this to me. But everyone will know that you will forget all the nice things that people say to you, either in life or in your career, but you'll always remember the bad things. And you can't have those voices in your head. Like, the person who wrote something about you, like, you know, it will suddenly make you so self-conscious about your body or the way that you write. will not have remembered they left that comment 10 minutes later. There are things people said to me 20 years ago that I still remember every day. Like, you can't afford, you have to protect your head so carefully if you're a writer, and your voice needs to be the loudest and only one in there, really. And to suddenly start inviting, to open at the top of your head and suddenly have a load of anonymous arseholes just kind of going, your grasp of grammar is poor. Will just take up so much time to forget them before you start writing. So do not, I would never, one of the pieces of advice I will give to this young writer is never read any comments on your pieces. Don't do it at all. Listen to your friends and family, when they're saying what they like about it. But like, if you don't know that person, why would you listen to their opinion? Thank you.
Ate.
Hello, I'm Ate Jewel. Lovely to meet you.
My never-ending story girl. Hello.
Oh my goodness, I wanted to be the princess and
Yes.
and the warrior. And
And the bit where the horse goes into the mud is so sad.
It's sad.
Still traumatised. Never forget.
I know. I write for Andrea at Marie Claire, and hello, I'm a podcast host. First of all, your sock game is hard.
Thank you. My sisters made this up. They thought they were fucking me over at Christmas. They were like, our Christmas present to you is we're making socks with our faces on.
I love a good
These are the
sock.
faces of all my sisters. They were like, we're giving you a deliberately shit present to fuck you over. I was like, no, you don't understand. I love them. I'm wearing them all the time.
I can tell you're my people. I've got 2 questions for you.
Yes.
I also was the child who pretended to be sick
Yeah.
to watch 1950s MGM musicals. I want to know your top favourites. And number 2, do you think being homeschooled and unsubscribing to how society saw you, what your place were,
Yes.
really helped you? Because
Yeah.
that's something I've really battled. Like, this is not for you. I had my head mistress said you shouldn't apply to Oxford. They don't want your kind. I had a lot of people tell me what my place was.
Yes.
So do you think it actually helped you unsubscribing to the way society saw you?
I think in a huge way, that's a really great question. Yeah, no, in a lot of ways. I mean, the bad side about homeschooling is, as I found from nearly everybody I've met who has been homeschooled, is you can tell them at parties because they're incredibly socially anxious and already drunk. Like, if you're not taught to socialise as a child, if the only people you can socialise with are your brothers and sisters, you will not learn how to talk to people, and that will last into your adulthood. Also, it makes having formative crushes really difficult if you're homeschooled, because the only people that you're hanging out with are your siblings. Like, you're just kind of like, well, I'm going to fancy the postman now. I'm so desperate for someone to fancy. But it was when I wrote How to Be a Woman that I realised what the advantages of being homeschooled were, because the amount of women that I met, like when I would do the live tours and stuff, and we'd do the signings, and they go on for hours, and everyone would be really drunk, and everyone was really confessional, and they were amazing. The amount of women who just went, I don't know how to say this in a way that doesn't sound offensive, but how are you so confident in who you are? Like I'd stand on stage and go, I genuinely believe I'm really fucking beautiful and hot. I'm really happy with who I am. And they would just go, like, did you mean that? And I would go, yes. And they go, like, how? How? I've had voices in my head since I was so young telling me I am not beautiful and I'm not hot. And I think that was the big thing about not going to school. I could live in a totally fantasy world where I was absolutely amazing. And I never had to meet the brutal reality. It's the same thing as not reading the below the line comments, really. If you don't hang out with people, you never get bad comments. And if you are a writer, you can lead the life of a hermit. Like, sometimes when I meet young writers, they're like, God, your life must be so glamorous and amazing. You're meeting all these people and travelling around the world. Obviously, sitting here now doing this kind of belies what I'm about to say next, but I never go anywhere or do anything. I literally sit at home all day and type, and then I take the dog for a walk, and then I try and make a meal that involves cabbage, because it's important to eat more green leafy vegetables. That's it. And then I'll go out and interview someone, and then I'll come back, and that's literally it. So yeah, the life of a hermit, I think, yeah. If you can, people are the problem, aren't they? Let's face it. Reality is overrated. We need to be in a never-ending story. Thank you.
Hi, it's really inspiring. As a working class girl from Stockton-on-Tees,
Hey.
I've always read all your columns, been very inspired. I'd love to talk more about that, particularly why I haven't lost my accent after 30 years in London. But
I'm glad you haven't. Like, I wish I'd kept mine. I literally dropped it the first day down here. Everyone talked like this, so I went, okay, I'm going to talk like this. But I've been told subsequently I would get loads of really great voiceover work if I'd kept my Wolverhampton accent. So I've lost out there. So keep your accent, babe. Get
well,
that
30 years in and it's staying, so it's looking like that. But I could talk about loads of things, but I think one of the things that I really picked on was that You said about journalists, young writers, and older writers, I'm the same age as you, about how we have to write about our trauma, and and I'm a freelancer and I write for a few of the nationals, and how I'll write a piece that's fundamentally about something. So, for instance, say moderate drinking, and then it comes out and the title is "My Dad Died an Alcoholic at Christmas."
Yeah.
It's like, what would you advise to us, moderately successful writers who are still struggling and being asked to write, and I don't know if this is a female or male thing, about our trauma all the time?
I know. It happens even to successful writers. One of my most successful female friends wrote a big piece about a very pressing issue this week, of which she had had some experience in, and she put 3 anecdotes in about her own life. And then the rest of it was interviews with people, and it was a really solidly, brilliantly put together piece. And her editors then were like, no, we need to make it, like, can you give us another 5 anecdotes, plus we're going to come to your house and do a photograph of you looking traumatised. Like, she's 50, she's top of the game, and they were still asking her to do it. And she was just like, in the end, like, what can you do? You just like, you go, I can do you another draft where I make it, I will put, more jokes in or try and write it harder, but I'm not prepared to give any more. She was, in the end, she just went, you can just spike it. Like, I'm just not going to do that. It's really tough because I think at the beginning of your career, you do sometimes have to compromise and do stuff. Like, at the beginning, you do have to put some skin in the game. Like, I mean, I can remember The Guardian asked me, when I was like 17, The Guardian asked me to write a piece. They rang up and went, you're a teenager, write something about being a teenager. And I didn't go anywhere or do anything or leave the house. And I was like, I could write a really good piece about like walking around Wolverhampton town centre but not having any money, and like what it's like walking into shops and nothing fitting me because I'm fat and not being able to afford it. And I knew that would be a great piece. I was like, I can write such a vibey piece. I'll make it so funny. It'll be a really great piece. And I'm like, no, we kind of need something more, anything dark. It's quite hard being a teenager, isn't it? Don't you know anything dark? Luckily, I'd watched an episode of Casualty the night before where a teenage girl who was trained to be a ballerina had developed anorexia and started eating loo roll in order to make her stomach feel full. And I went, yeah, I've got a friend who's got anorexia who's started eating loo roll in order to make herself feel full. I could write about how upset I am about my friend. And they went, yeah, we'd love that. It's still in my file now, me being so sad about my friend Julia who's an anorexic. There was no Julia. I just simply copied it off Casualty. I do sometimes wonder, like, kind of, yeah, like, everyone loves to read the gossip about someone's lives, but it has to be, if you're going to write about your trauma, it has to be with consent. You can't rock up to a woman and go, tell me all the bad things in your life. And even though it's so tempting to go, okay, they'll splash big with this piece, if, as we were talking about before, then they keep coming back to you for more trauma pieces, maybe it is better to make the sacrifice and not do that thing, because you don't want to get to be known as the trauma girl. Thank you, though. That's a brilliant question. Hi, babe.
Thank you for being the voice of my generation and being the Madonna of writing for me. You were the real rebel punk spirit that I always loved reading your work, and that was always inspiring.
Sorry, I just need to take a minute to absorb the best compliment I've ever had. Thank you. And now I feel turned on. Thank you, yes.
I'm intrigued about your point of view on AI and it being used as a help or as a replacement for writers. I think a lot of young writers now, they use the apps that will rewrite things, ChatGPT, Grammarly, and all the other things. What's your feelings, relationships about it, and advice for young writers?
Yes.
Actually, use it, don't use it.
I mean, I am obsessed with this because I think for a lot of people in my generation, we're like, they're coming to take our jobs. We're like miners in the 1980s. The AI will take our jobs. This is the end of it. But a friend of mine who's got the most up-to-date ChatGPT that you have to pay for, I won't pay for it, asked it to write a column in the style of Captain Moran. And it started off going, it was an opening scene, it was all written in the first person about how I was on the bus, but my really high heels were making it difficult for me to walk down the bus. And then in the column I started slagging off Donald Trump in a kind of like a really basic and non-funny way. And I was like, hang on. These AI things have scraped, like the AI has scraped every single one of my fucking books for free without permission at all. They've absorbed everything I've ever written without me giving permission or paying for it. And on the first paragraph, it thinks I wear high heels. When everything I've written is about how much I hate high heels. Maybe this isn't the mega mind that's going to take over the world that we think it is. Like, this is a fairly basic piece of fact-checking here. So, I've read a lot about AI. I don't think it will be able to do what we do because it can't think. And also so much of thought, it mimics, it's a mirroring thing, it's an echo thing. It can make it look like, it can make a sentence look like a thing a human would say, but it doesn't understand how we feel. It hasn't got a body. AI doesn't understand feeling shame. It doesn't understand feeling scared. It doesn't understand feeling love for your child. It doesn't understand any of the things that I would actually want to write about and that I do write about, or anybody wants to read about. You want to read about the emotions. Why was I ashamed of my body? Why was I scared of being in a room? Why do I love my children? AI will never understand that. It literally can't understand those things. So I don't think it can do what we do. I wouldn't bet against it because, the world is often more awful than you think. But do you really want to listen to the confessions of a robot? Or do you want to listen to the confessions of someone who's just telling you the story of their lives and you're kind of like, you want to keep turning the page? So my eldest daughter, she's a video director. She just did the Sugar Babes video. It was amazing. And she's also a photographer. And I was looking at some AI photo shoots, and it was an amazing one. It was a tennis-themed one, and it just looked fucking fabulous. And they've got these amazing imaginary outfits with incredible models on the pitch at Wimbledon doing this amazing shoot, something you could never shoot or would cost so much money to shoot. And I was like, this looks amazing. And my first two thoughts were, one, does this mean my daughter will never get work shooting fashion shoots again? Okay, I'm against it. But then I was like, but this means that some poor kid who would never be able to put together a photo shoot, who could never hire Wimbledon or get these models or get this gear, they can imagine this photo shoot and they can show it us. So the thing about AI is it's not just one thing. Like in some places it will be amazing and some not. In that, at the end of it, I was like, I think this maybe will be to the greater good. Because someone who could never get a top-class model and hire an amazing venue and call in all those amazing garms and do that incredible makeup can nonetheless give you an incredible fashion shoot, and I'm interested in seeing that. What I would hope would happen is that working-class kid, having done this amazing AI photo shoot, would then be commissioned by a real magazine to actually do something in real life, because presumably that is what they would want to do in the end. Well, I think we see the uncanny thing, don't we? I can spot AI a mile off, but I'm 50 and I'm used to seeing human beings, whereas I think other things, maybe sort of younger people are not. But the amount of times my kids have gone, have you seen this? And I'm like, it's AI, it's not real. But they haven't got that, they don't see the uncanniness of it. But it'll be interesting, with all these technologies, people will find a way to fuck with it and make it more human. When synthesizers first came along, everyone was like, oh, it's cold and it's horrible and it'll never feel emotional in the way that playing a guitar will. And then you get Depeche Mode and you get Erasure and you're kind of like, no, this is joyful or doomy and incredible. And humans will always find a way to make technology dirty and grungy and put emotions into it. As long as you're using it as a tool and not the actual final product. Thank you, that was a great question.
Any other question?
Hi, Caitlin. Hello, Brian from Computer Weekly. Nice to see you again.
Hey, darling.
All right.
Computer Weekly, king, yes. Mr. Bates, first in the post office, we all love you. You did a thing, it was so good. Yeah.
Marvellous. Return to just the conversation around challenges and opportunities for working class people in this industry. You may have seen before you came on, I don't know, Angela Rayner resigned this morning.
Nicola Gill texted me. Have I got to write about that now, Nicola? Do I need to go into a room and write about this?
Putting aside the politics of it, her example, if nothing else, is one of how difficult it can be to be a working class person in the establishment, even one as successful as she had.
Yeah.
It's still tough for working class people and diverse, people of diverse backgrounds of all sorts. As well as sponsoring your Young Writers Prize, what would you say to all the people in this room that we could all do to create a better environment that gives more opportunities for working class or people of diverse backgrounds?
That's a really good question. There's a really brilliant scheme in Sweden. I know one of the top columnists in Sweden. Whenever he goes on holiday, he chooses young writers who need a leg up for him when he's on holiday. And he sort of introduces each sort of writer at the beginning of it and goes, I'm now introducing you to this writer who's doing my column this week, and just sort of give them the slots. I guess letting people, what would make it? I mean, it's just that invitation. I mean, talking about the job. Ages ago, I came up with this idea, which I'm always coming up with. I could go on Dragon's Den and do the entire show with millions of ideas that I come up with and that I never do anything about. But I wanted there to be a directory of jobs, almost like the Argos catalogue, but online, showing videos of what everyone's jobs are actually like. So if you're a working class kid, you generally only know about jobs that your parents and their friends have. When you're growing up, those are the jobs that you think are possible. So if you're working class, you won't know about these jobs. If there's an online directory where you get to see what a job is of being a sub-editor on a national newspaper, like what it's like, you know, working in a tech company, whatever it is, people just doing little video diaries of what their day is. Here's what I do. Here's the skills that I need to have. Here's a mistake I might make. Here's how I could correct that mistake. Little 5-minute videos show you what those jobs are. If you're like 14, 15, working out what your GCSEs are going to be, you get to flick through this job directory and actually see what the jobs are. Watch a little video of it. It's the feminist saying, I cannot be what I cannot see. How can we tell those kids what these jobs are like and make them, because I think as soon as you see it, if you know that's the kind of thing you'd want to do, you're like, yeah, that's where I want to be. That's what I want to do. Like Valerie Grove telling me that there was such a thing as a columnist. And I then went to my local library and they had a whole shelf. I didn't know about this because we couldn't afford newspapers in our house. They had a whole shelf of best-ofs of Alan Corran, Catherine Whitehorn, Sue Lim, Gilly Cooper. Every Fleet Street columnist had a best-of book there, and I read every single one. And by the time I'd read that shelf, I was like, okay, I know how to be a columnist. And it was just simply being told what being a columnist was, and then reading those resources, it was like, okay, I can do that. So, yeah, we need to show them.
Thank you so
Brilliant
much.
question.
I think we are out of time and it's time for lunch. I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you again.
Thank you.
For a lovely, lovely discussion. And thank you to the brilliant team at Rosewood, AV team Eclipse, the BSME team and the committee, many of whom are here. Thank you very much. And obviously our lovely guests as well, all of the BSME members here today. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed it and stick around after lunch and mingle. Thank you.
Thank you so